Hello and good morning to our listeners from around the world. I want to welcome you to another edition of This Morning with Soulivity, broadcasting live from our studio right here in the nation's capital, Washington, D.C., and on KMET 1490 AM radio in Southern California. My name is Brian Wesley Johnson, and I'm so glad you're here. I'm joined today by some very special friends, Candice Harper, and in a minute, Tami Gaines, who's going to be coming on in just a second. Good morning, Candy.
Good morning, my love. How's everything?
It is good. It is good. We're at the end of the week. Whoop, whoop. How was your week? How was your week?
My week was really fantastic. I cannot complain. I don't know if I mentioned last week that I've been doing my whole marketing thing and shooting videos and
Yeah.
yeah. So, just getting stuff in place, getting the word out there, reaching out to people and expanding in my new location because, I'm only recently in Maryland.
Right,
And I've met
right.
some really good people in real life. That's a thing. It's so
Oh,
good
yeah.
to meet good people in real life because everything is so digital now. So that's
and
what I
you
highlight.
and I love Silver Spring. Oh my God.
Yeah, it's beautiful.
It is blowing up. I mean, my
Yeah,
gosh, it's just getting bigger and bigger and bigger.
yeah,
My week has been fantastic.
yeah,
Just loving everything that's happening. Some so great shows this week
yeah.
with and some very special guest Shawnee. Bitten
Yes.
Gibson was on earlier. We love you, Shawnee.
Tuesday was
Uh,
so much fun.
yeah, yeah. So if you get a chance, go check out that show with her. And today's show, we've got a fantastic topic that we're going to be talking about in just a second.
Yeah.
Listen, just want to remind everyone that, listen, as we talk about today's topic, if you have any questions, comments, thoughts, just post them right to our live chats on Facebook and YouTube, and we'll get those messages up on our live stream and do some shout outs to you as well. So we want to make this
Yeah.
an interactive conversation because remember, this is a real conversation that will empower you every single day.
Definitely.
Um, so why don't we get started? We begin today's show with a story from the nation's capital and from the United States Supreme Court.
Mm.
The Supreme Court on Thursday allowed a 12-year-old transgender girl in West Virginia to continue competing on her middle school girls' sports team while a lawsuit over the state ban continues. The justices refused to deliver an appeals court order that made it refused to disturb an appeals court order that made it possible for the girl Becky Pepper Jackson to continue playing on her school's track and cross country teams, where she regularly finishes near the back of the pack.
Mm.
Now, West Virginia is amongst 20 states that ban transgender athletes from participating in sports consistent with their gender identity, according to the Movement Advancement Project, a pro LGBTQ rights think tank. Now, Justices Samuel Alito and Clarence Thomas would have allowed West Virginia to enforce its law against Pepper Jackson. Now, in asking the high court to allow the law to take effect while the case plays out, West Virginia told the justices that this case, this case implicates a question fraught with emotions and differing perspectives.
Mm.
That is all the more reason to defer to state lawmakers pending appeal. The decision was the West Virginia legislature's to make. The end of this legislation will confirm that it made a valid one. Wow.
Mm. Mm.
Ooh.
Right. So much to unpack.
I know. It's like, man, oh man.
Yeah.
I mean, I've got some facts and figures around our transgender community, and a little bit of history that's there. But Candy, just what's your initial reaction to this? Because this is all about today we're talking about transgender rights for students and
Yeah.
our youth. And so,
Yeah.
woo.
I know, right? So, I mean, it's so nuanced. And I think one thing that it's important to unpack first is the ban itself, because I think oftentimes we assume that it's a, right-wing state, that the ban is just that transgender students cannot participate. or that it's just an absolute. And I have to say, I was surprised by the article that the ban is actually just that, and I say just as if there's any, justness to limiting what people can do.
Right.
But it basically says that it's women's sports that are off limit. So
Right.
yeah,
Right.
so your gender identity, it doesn't matter if you're wanting to participate in men's sports.
Mm-hmm.
And I have like two feelings about that, because on the one hand, I feel like, we are on a trajectory towards equality, right? I
Yes.
believe that.
Yes.
Even though, a lot of people will say that we're not, and there's a lot of signs that we've got a long way to go. I
Mm-hmm.
do believe that even the conversation around transgenderism is part of our journey towards equality.
Mm-hmm.
But then I also feel like when we think about biology, and I'm being careful with my words around this
Mm-hmm.
because you know
Mm-hmm.
me, I'm unconditional. I believe that everyone deserves the respect for whatever, however they want to identify or however they feel, right?
Right. Right.
When it comes to the biology, I cannot completely deny that there is the difference in physicality with some um, male born compared to female born.
Right.
Now, in this case, like you mentioned, the transgender girl is actually mostly in the back of the pack when it comes to running. So she's
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
she's not necessarily a great runner. So
Right.
like the playing field is probably a little more even
Mm-hmm.
as far as her abilities, but
Mm-hmm.
in other cases that's not necessarily so. So I say all of this to say that we don't want to just act like the West Virginia band is just like, you cannot play if you're transgender. It is
Right.
that women's sports are somewhat protected. And as a biological woman, there is a part of me that, while I respect female identity, I also feel like there's something precious that does need to be protected around women being able to compete on a level playing field.
Yeah. And
Yes.
and yeah, I totally get that. And I think that just amplifies the necessity for Americans, to specifically Americans, because this is what, like I said before, this is among 20 states
Mm,
that are mirroring this same law. And we can go, there's a whole history behind why that is, because there's law mills that are out here that create laws for states to just pass.
yeah.
But it we need to be talking about this, and we need to move in the direction of resolution,
Mm,
because you know what about, I remember growing up, what about the female born children that also identified as female,
mhm,
right, who were just big, right?
mm.
you
You mean
know
like big in stature,
Big
like
in
um,
stature, because I remember this same type of it wasn't exactly the same because it wasn't transgender, but I remember the same talk about the Williams sisters when they first started playing tennis in the pros, right?
mm, like there was an
Yeah, there
unfair
was this
advantage
unfair
because
advantage because they're just big and stocky and da 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 da. This was also that same type of rhetoric that was coming from folks. And so again, are we really, as I dig a little deeper here, are we really talking about transgender, or are we really
mm,
talking about this pushback against maybe parents, and I'm going to be very specific here, maybe white parents who believe that their
mm,
children should be able to win regardless of whatever is happening out in terms of other people competing, especially when it's like maybe a person of color coming onto the team,
mm.
where they're like, oh, well, they're more
Yeah.
naturally athletic and da 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 da, so that's unfair. I mean, what does it mean to be fair?
Yeah. I mean, that's a great question. Because I think that's right on the money. I mean, you can't say it's funny because 'cause I've been listening to the Audible book of Aristotle's Rhetoric, right? And there's a whole chapter where Aristotle talks about, you talk about, colonialization, but he talks about, if the strongest man is stronger than the strongest woman, then you can make the conclusion that men are stronger. And right, and it feeds into that sort of colonized mind of competition, right? That there has to be a better than, there has to be a stronger than. But we know that humanity is
Right.
nuanced. So yeah, like I was saying, the fact that this particular student and they do speak out. Her name's Becky
Right.
Pepper Jackson, even though she's a minor, they speak out so that her identity
Right.
is known. Is not stronger than the other girls on the
Mhm.
team. And here's the thing too, I totally believe deserving to stay because I feel like when it comes to children and team sports and team things, and when they, have connections with their peers and they connect with who they
Mhm.
connect with, that's something that is
Right.
sacred, right?
Right.
But then it's like, how do you manage it so that when that's not the case, when it's more of a contact sport, when it's, there is a level of there needing to be um, regulation around, I don't know, it's almost like the unfair advantage. Like I get what you're
Mhm.
saying around, what it means racially because the Williams sisters are
Mhm.
bigger, but I also feel like there is a level of physical danger with certain sports if, well, let's say one or two team members are markedly stronger. Right? So how do you set it up that there's still inclusion, also protecting those who aren't as strong?
Woo!
Not saying that what you're saying doesn't
Right.
exist. It
Right.
does.
Right. Right. No, I
Right?
get it. I get it. I do. I will all I can say is that from my perspective as someone who um played sports, even contact sports, when I was younger, I was not the biggest guy on the field. So
Mm,
there were times at which I felt as though it was unfair because there were guys that were bigger than me and stronger than me and that kind of thing. And I
mm,
just think that that comes with the territory,
yeah.
right? That you can't say that if a trans person comes to play on a female team and that they're bigger and that's unfair. Well, when you have a non-trans female who's the same size and
Mhm,
that's okay, right?
yeah.
And so I just think that that just comes with any sport. Listen, we're going to take a quick break, but we're
Mm.
going to continue talking about this important topic today. We'll be back with more of This Morning with Soulivity.
Hi there, Sheila Applegate here with some exciting news. I've joined the incredible Soulivity team as the host of the new Consciously Awesome live show, where I will be sharing insights to help you discover your full brilliance and claim the vibrant life you deserve. So tune in every Wednesday right here on Soulivity TV to join the fun, and remember to subscribe to the channel so that you don't miss a single episode. Have an awesome week, and I will see you on Wednesday.
Have you ever asked the question, if I was to be anything, what would I be? Regardless of money, regardless of status, beyond popularity, and fame. Living your passion, feeling your life has purpose. Soulivity is a space to nurture that which lives in all of us. A place where work can become play, and doing what we love creates the dreams of a lifetime.
And we're back with more of This Morning with Soulivity. I've got my beautiful co-host Candy Harper with me. Hey, Candy.
Hello there.
Yeah, this is Brian Wesley Johnson, and we are talking about transgender rights for students, the latest that you need to know. This was prompted from a story out of the Supreme Court where in West Virginia, Becky Pepper Jackson has been allowed to continue to run girls track at her middle school. And just want to kind of go through some quick information here around just the transgender community in general. Transgender people come from all walks of life, and the Human Rights Commission Foundation has estimated that there are more than 2 million of them across the United States. Now, alongside the increased visibility of trans celebrities like Lauren Cox, Jazz Jennings, or the stars of the hit Netflix series Pose, 3 out of every 10 adults in the United States personally knows someone who is trans. Now, the word transgender or trans is an umbrella term for people whose gender identity is different from the sex assigned to them at birth. Although the word transgender and the modern definition of it only came into use in the late 20th century, people who would fit under this definition have existed in every culture throughout recorded history. So just an important point that I wanted to make here, that trans children specifically who became trans adults have been here since the dawn of time. So this is not new.
Yeah.
It's not new. And we're going to welcome to the conversation Tami Gaines. Hey, Tami.
Good morning.
Good
morning,
morning. Good morning. How you been, girl?
Ooh,
That's a whole mood.
Right?
that's right. That right there
That's
says
a
it
lot.
all. Yeah, I'm like, is there a full moon this week?
Wow.
But no, dude, I'm still standing. I'm good.
Right. We got a comment that came in from Sheila Applegate, one of our co-hosts. Hey, Sheila.
Hey, Sheila.
Oh, Sheila. She says, if we really want a fair playing field, we would divide teams on skill and ability rather than gender.
Yeah. I saw when that comment came in, and I hear that, like that makes a lot of sense to me.
Yeah.
And I
Right.
do think that it speaks to, this idea of equality. Like I said earlier, I do think that this whole conversation has us on what is ultimately a journey of equality, because I don't
Yeah.
think it's, I think, people who are resistant make it about whether you wear a dress or not, things
Yeah.
like that.
Yeah.
And ultimately, we do all have equal strengths that are just often different strengths.
Right.
Right?
I don't know.
So
Yeah.
I do think it's a necessary shift that is happening in the world, that this conversation has opened up in the way that it has. And I agree with Sheila. I think that what we would be up against is and what we are up against is what's the word I'm looking for? The need for competition, like the
Yeah.
avoidance of unconditionality that we have as human beings.
Right. And that there is a conflict
Yeah.
that happens sometimes based upon that. Tami, what are your thoughts? I mean, would love to. Yeah, I know.
Yeah,
Right.
and Tami, because your sports background, I can't wait to hear what you think about it.
Yeah. So I actually disagree.
Yeah.
And it has nothing to do with trans, right? My daughter's best friend is trans. We were out to dinner last week, it has more to do with we don't have equality now in sports,
Yeah.
like gender equality.
Mhm.
So um, I'm assuming we're talking about, are we talking about adults or kids with sports?
Kids.
Kids.
All right. I feel differently about that because I do think they should be able to, I don't know. You know what? As an athlete,
It's hard.
think about football.
Mhm.
There are some natural abilities. Like men are naturally stronger in some areas than women are.
Mhm.
And they just had the first woman, not trans, the first woman is like playing on a
Yeah.
men's college football
Yes.
team.
Yes. Yes.
So I feel like maybe we'll get there eventually, but this is not the season for it. We don't even have equal pay for for sports.
Mm.
I just think it would be a very hard leap today.
Mm.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. That makes a lot of sense. I mean, not and I don't think that you're saying that the fight for these rights of the students needs to stop. I don't think that that's where
No,
you're just
no,
saying, you're just
definitely not.
giving the reality. I feel, and I feel you on this, that there's the reality of all these converging interests that I really feel that are in alignment and parallel with each other.
Mm.
But I think that we as humans, and especially people who are not as broadly thinking about these things that are panoramic, like the two of you, where you can actually see all this in a panorama and say, oh, this is all connected, right?
Right.
I think that there's some of us who are so narrow-minded and are socialized to be that, or people who may be panoramic, but they want to control people, are basically saying, nah, we ain't gonna deal with that, right? We're gonna keep things the
Right.
same and all that kind of thing. But folks have been trying to keep equality and then equity and then pure freedom away from a lot of people for a long time.
Well, didn't we talk? This is like what our country is built on.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
But
Listen,
So it's gonna
yeah.
Tami, I want to hear more of what Tami has to say with the context of the Becky Pepper Jackson story, because the thing about her, Tami, is that she's 12 and she identifies born male, identifies female, and has been on the track team in West Virginia for a while.
Mhm.
And so the state law in West Virginia is to protect. The idea is to protect women's sports, in the sense that they're saying that, if you're transgender and you're allowed to play young women's sports, that there's an unfair advantage. So what I'm curious about how you think about it is, because I believe it's, like I said, I believe it's sacred not to take away her ability to play with the team. She's already been doing it, and she's not as good as some of the other girls.
Right.
Yeah, I'm curious, like, what you think about, how that should be handled with young people in situations like that. Because
Right.
I agree with you in the sense of adults. Like, you think about MMA and football and things like that. We were talking about that earlier. There is a part of me that feels like it's a dangerous navigation. But with kids, and when there is a difference in ability, like Sheila was saying, like, if we actually let them divide teams based on skill rather than gender, you don't feel like that would be, I don't know.
Right. So why don't we take a quick break, and Tami, you think about that, and when we come back, we'll come right back to you so that we can continue this conversation, because it's so important, y'all.
Yeah.
It's so important. We'll be right back in about 60 seconds.
Have you ever asked the question, if I was to be anything, what would I be? Regardless of money, regardless of status, beyond popularity and fame. Living your passion, feeling your life has purpose. Soulivity is a space to nurture that which lives in all of us. a place where work can become play, and doing what we love creates the dreams of a lifetime.
And we're back with more of This Morning with Soulivity. Tami, you had some thoughts.
Yeah, Candy, it's funny. You asked me the what do I think about this particular situation? And when I was talking before, I stopped myself because she's running track, right?
Yeah.
And she's 12. Eventually, she's going to go to high school. Are they going to let her run track, or is that going to be like a whole nother issue? And then eventually, maybe she'll go on to college and want to run in college.
Yeah.
I think it's tough. I'm 1,000% for transgender rights in all areas.
Mhm.
I'm also protective of them
Mm.
because I feel like we can make the road easy for kids now, but it might just get harder when they get older.
Mm.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like she might encounter a coach that's like, no way you're running, which is like a whole nother mountain to overcome.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
But then how does that speak to like her, does that mean that she shouldn't be allowed? Because I think that's where we get in, like the inclusion thing is so important, especially with,
Yeah, the inclusion.
right?
So are they trying to, forgive me, are they trying to like kick her off the team?
Well, the West Virginia law says that with women's sports, the transgender students are not allowed with women's sports. With men's sports, they are allowed.
Exactly.
That meaning that girls can play boys sports, and if you're transgender and you identify as female but born a male, you would have to play men's sports. That's
okay. Well, isn't that the problem right there? Like fundamentally, a lack of equity.
Right. Exactly.
Yes.
Exactly.
So I guess I believe that's not going to go away as the little kids get older.
Right.
Especially that law is crazy.
and it's in 20 states. The same law is in 20 states.
That makes absolutely no sense whatsoever.
Well, it goes back to this whole like pseudo-religious, belief system of the roles of men and women, right? And even that definition is based in the lack of understanding that there have been and will always be people who are transgender. Right.
Right.
I mean, and so again, and then that goes to, do you know your history? Right? Do you know factual information? And then on top of that, there's this layer of, oh, well, these people are just born as a man or a woman, and then they're just choosing all of a sudden. Like, doesn't this sound familiar with the same type of narratives that were being spoke around our other gay and lesbian people, where, oh, they're just choosing to be gay, right? Not that they are gay.
Yeah.
It's all steeped in ignorance at the end of the day.
Absolutely.
I think the transgender conversation is just more difficult.
Absolutely.
Because, the three of us have experienced, various forms of discrimination.
Right.
I just want to protect my kids from that, whether they're mine or not, mine or somebody else's. So,
yeah.
We had an awkward moment. I shouldn't even say this on. I shouldn't say this on the air, but I'm going to, because
ooh, I'm like,
ooh. Right? It's going to be good. It's not going to be good. We went to dinner for my daughter's 17th birthday, and we took 3 of her best friends, one of whom is trans. So I've known him since he was, I don't know, like 4, and now they're 17. So I haven't spent as much time with him like recently, just because they're teenagers. But we got to the restaurant, and I could feel people watching us.
Yeah.
And I was already
Mm.
like, oh, no,
Yeah.
no, no, we're not going to do this in here.
Mhm.
And then he wanted to go to the bathroom. And I said, do you want me to come with you? He was like, no, I could find the bathroom.
Right. Hello.
And then I looked over at Brie and she was like, I have to go too. So she went with him. But that was like, I was just looking around the restaurant like, wow, they're so young to have to deal with that.
Yeah.
You know
You know what I mean? Like life
yeah,
is hard
absolutely.
as it is.
Absolutely. And I
Yeah.
mean, we're arguing, they're in many states, they're still arguing over bathrooms. Like, really? Really? At home,
Yeah.
people use the same bathroom.
Yeah, you know what? For here, it depends where you go.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah,
I think,
yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
I think they left it up to the restaurants, like
Yeah.
not some state law, because I've seen both.
Yeah, and it's crazy.
Yeah.
Just as we're coming up on our next break, just want to kind of give some more information to people from the Human Rights Campaign and their foundation. I think that's very important for people to understand, because there's the issues in the trans community are even deeper, in my opinion, around some of the struggles that they deal with. So things like stigma, harassment, discrimination. About a half a decade ago, only 1/4 of people in the United States supported trans rights, and support increased to 62% by the year 2019. And despite this progress, the trans community still faces considerable stigma due to more than a century of being characterized as mentally ill, socially deviant, and sexually predatory. Okay. So
Hey,
let's
Brian,
dive a little bit. Yeah.
I just want to jump in here. Sheila posted a comment, so I know
Yeah.
I feel like I need to clarify like what I just said.
Okay, sure.
Yeah, Sheila wrote, as a mother of a transgender child, I can tell you they're the same person today as they were the day they were born. I was not implying that at all. I was, and I know that he's the same person as he was when I knew him, when he was little. I was more talking about the reaction in what was a very small like jazz club. There was only like maybe 40 people in there.
Right.
So that's what I was like really referring to, was the societal issue. Sorry, Brian. I just want
No problem. No problem. Thanks for that clarification. Poverty. Trans people live in poverty at elevated rates. And for trans people of color, these rates are even higher. Around 29% of trans adults live in poverty as well. 39% of Black trans adults, 48% of Latinx trans adults, and 35% of Alaska Native Asian, Native Americans, and Native Hawaiian and Pacific Islander trans adults. And really quickly, only 30% of women's shelters are willing to house trans women.
I have heard that statistic. That is a huge problem. I have a friend that owns 3 shelters.
I got chills. And I read that earlier and I got chills again. Like, really?
Oh, I heard that a couple of years ago. Well, they did a documentary, I think, about homelessness. And this issue of shelters came up. That's big, to have no place to go.
Yeah. And I mean,
and yeah.
I mean, again,
I have a friend actually, he owns 3 shelters, and I talked to him about this after I saw the documentary. And he was like, we're not ready for all that. Which is such a
horrible
statement.
Listen, we're going to take a really quick break, and we're going to continue this conversation. We're going to have take some audience comments as well. Again, when I hear people, sometimes we talk about that we're not ready, but people better get ready.
Absolutely. How do we make that happen though, Brian?
Absolutely. All right. We'll be right back, everybody.
6 years ago, when I started Soulivity, my vision was to support everyone in improving their life through the discovery of their passion and purpose. so they could become the best version of themselves, to battle fear and ignorance, and create a better world today. Get inspired to live your passion and purpose. Visit Soulivity.com now.
And we're back with more of This Morning with Soulivity. I'm joined by my fantastic and beautiful and wonderful host, Candice Harper and Tami Gaines. This is Brian Westley Johnson, and we are talking about transgender rights for students. I think we went a little bit more broad and talked about youth and adults. And, you know, when I think about this, I'm thinking about, Tami, you kind of brought this up earlier, and that is, you know, what stage are we setting for these beautiful people who will grow up and be adults in, you know, as, you know, in later life? What's the type, what do we need? What are we saying to them? You know, I mean, I know it's hard. I know it's difficult. I know people have their own thoughts and feelings about it, but I think it goes back to something that, you know, Sheila, who's listening right now, said earlier, and that is around, you know, skill and ability in terms of like sports, but letting those people, I think it goes to letting those kids allow their wants, needs, and desires be their guide, and that we're supporting them in living the life that they believe that they can live in that moment.
Can I interject for a second?
Sure.
Because I feel, and I feel this for myself as well, and if it resonates with y'all, you can say so, and if not, also, you know, I feel like this is such a hard topic to have a strong stance about, because it does come down to all the reasons we look for to marginalize each other, for one thing. And you know, there's so much nuance to this, and no one wants to, now I say no one, I say that so generally. Yes, there are people out there who are really just about supremacy and wanting for themselves. So let me no one.
By the way, a lot of people, not a little bit of people.
Yeah. But there's also a lot of people who, you know, really want to live unconditionally, really want to experience unconditionality.
Yes.
I identify myself as one of them. And I think that unconditionality is the journey that we're on as a human race. I feel like that is the future.
Yes.
Right. And the way that I view the entire conversation around transgenderism is that it challenges us to be unconditional. It challenges us to let down the guard of competition and supremacy.
Yes.
To let down the guard of thinking that somebody has to be better.
Right.
Or stronger, or, you know, smarter. And so there's that, and that's a very important conversation. But within our transition as a society, as a culture, there also has to be care around those who might get lost in the sauce, like those who are weaker, or those who are questioning of their identity, and by weaker, I mean physically weaker when it comes to sports and things like that, or, you know, even less emotionally intelligent, even though those can sometimes be the hardest people to be unconditional around. Like, that's what is required here, because that's the whole reason that I think transgender people exist, is because it challenges all the constructs that we've made up as humans of what is supposed to be this and what is supposed to be that.
So Candy, by the way, I 1000% agree.
Me too.
Do you think we need to build in education into, like, education around the, you know, trans in schools, at work? Maybe we just remember. What do you think? Do you think we need to, like, formally start, like, educating our society?
Well, I think that it's a subtopic, a subcontext to building in emotional intelligence, which we've talked about before, right? So if we're building emotional intelligence into education and actual life skills and actual relating, understanding how to partner with people, And I do this with my clients. I had a client recently who was, questioning her sexual identity, and she wasn't sure if she wanted to identify as bisexual or date women or men. And ultimately, what we discovered is that it really is about what you're trying to create energy-wise, what you want to experience love-wise, and then the gender thing kind of flies out the window. And that's not necessarily true for everyone. I mean, there is the Kinsey scale. But I think that what it is getting to that understanding that it's about relating. We were talking on Tuesday about soul to soul and how we are connected, the circular nature of life. And it's that needs to be built in, because then no one will care about gender anymore.
Right.
Yeah,
right.
Who I relate with.
I'm sorry.
That's okay.
Oh, I just wanted to clarify one thing that you said. You said we're building in emotional intelligence. Do you mean currently, or we should be? Because that's not happening at all in school.
Yeah, I'm saying that's what we should be doing. I think there are progressive places where certain things in education have been implemented around life skills and things, but I think that is something that definitely needs to be implemented across the board. Emotional intelligence. Like, before we start talking about, even changing the history books, which definitely needs to be done, we need to start building in, how do we partner and relate with each other? Who do we be with each other?
Right.
So that a lot of the stuff that we are up against, as far as racial disparities and, transgender marginalization, all of that becomes moot if people are operating from an emotionally intelligent place. Like, it's so insane that we try to separate ourselves based on these things.
I think one important barrier that has to get taken down, and I think that this is one reason, Tami, I think, going to something that you said earlier around, what makes it so difficult. Adults who are limited in their thinking control what their children learn. And think. And so, you talk about and act. And so you talk about things like, we want our children to become more aware or more knowledgeable about the walks of life of all people on the planet that has existed since the dawn of time, right? That the first pushback is, oh, well, I don't want my child to learn all that, whatever, because it's not either, I'm uncomfortable with it just personally, or my religion says that that's defined in a certain way. And so I look at it from the perspective of things like what's happening in Tennessee, where you have youth and the Generation Z, which I don't know what water they were drinking. Whoa. But man, it just seems as though they've had enough, and that they're done. Speaking out. They're done. I mean, they're done. I mean, they're done with all of this stuff. And so I think that those kind of movements need to happen so that, Candice, the things that you're talking about can occur. Right. Listen, we're going to take another quick break, but when we come back, we'll talk a little bit more about this and get some final thoughts as well.
Hi there, this is Brian with Soulivity.com. I want to share some exciting news about our new Aspire Academy by Soulivity. Now, you probably want to know what the Aspire Academy by Soulivity is. Well, it exclusively connects you with people around the globe and who share the intense desire to improve themselves and create a better life for themselves today. There's classes, there's workshops, there's live events, and even more exclusively just for you. You see, I wanted you to have a safe space where you could grow, you can learn, and it would empower you in all aspects of your life, including your mind, your body, and your soul. So how do you get started? Well, it is so easy. First of all, the best part, joining Aspire Academy is absolutely free. Just click on the Join Now button, sign up, and begin your journey. As a special part of this invitation to you, there are some free courses that are available for you to try from our amazing roster of coaches and collaborators. It's our way of saying thank you for all of your support and being with us along our journey of expansion. I hope you enjoyed the Aspire Academy by Soulivity today. Start the process. Learn more about your passion, your purpose, and how to live a higher quality life.
And we're back with more of This Morning with Soulivity. Whew, a powerful topic today. I know there's much more to say, but we can actually come back to this again for another show. But Tami, I'll go to you first for some final thoughts.
I want you to think about this and respond if you want. You know, sometimes when things are really hard to integrate, when the mountain is, can you hear me?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And when the mountain is like too high to climb in terms of like equality and in terms of, you know, I'm using air quotes like integration, say, forget it, I'll do my own. And that's why we have Black colleges and universities.
Yeah.
You know, we have Jewish schools. Very, very, very dear friend is the principal at an all trans high school in Manhattan.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
It's the only one of its kind, I believe. And we talk all the time. We're trying to work out for me to go and speak about resilience. But what are your thoughts? Maybe it's just too hard for some of this stuff. And by the way, the school's wonderful. And the kids are awesome.
I mean, that is interesting. I didn't even know that existed, and I think that it's a great thing that it does exist. Mainly because that's maybe where we are in our journey. It's just like, you know, when historically Black colleges began, we were just in a place where that it just was absolutely necessary, right? And I think there's a possibility that that's the case here as well. Now, ideally, we get to a point where we won't have to do those things. But I think for now, in order to sort of break off the smaller pieces and take care of ourselves and each other, that perhaps something like that is not out of the realm of you know, what could be normal or what could be possible. It's interesting. I hadn't even thought about that. I did, you know, I was thinking about, because I guess Biden has a new rule that he's proposing that bans like, so that states can't ban transgender students from playing sports. But I guess there's exceptions built in the article. It said it to promote fairness or reduce injury and things. And I guess there's a level of that would be great, but just separating out, it sounds counterintuitive, but sometimes in the long run, you know, I think it could be a workable solution
And
for now.
you know, and I'm thinking about the fact that at the end of the day, in this moment, we have to create safe spaces for our transgender youth and adults to be. I mean, they are affected more deeply than just about anybody in any minority, because especially if you're talking about a trans person of color, right? Where we just talk, I mean, the statistics don't lie, where they're affected by poverty more, they have less opportunities, they have, you know, the law doesn't protect them, right? I mean, there's in the federal space, you know, you can't discriminate from them in the workplace, but that doesn't mean that restaurants and bars and schools and all these people can discriminate against them, right? So that's my first thought. My second thought is one of my favorite quotes from one of my heroes, again, I mean, this is, it's Martin Luther King. I mean, I know people talk about him all the time, but they talk about I have a dream and all that. But one of his most important quotes was, the ultimate measure of a person is not where they stand in moments of comfort or convenience, but where they stand at times of challenge and controversy.
Mm.
So, I get that this is a hard topic. I get that this is something that, is really, really difficult. But difficult ain't impossible. And that, and again, I talked about these Gen Z folks. I mean, they don't give a damn. They're like, we're going to blow through these walls and we're going to make it happen.
Right.
And let all you folks that are of this old thinking, just let you guys die off and then we'll be in charge. We can, just real talk.
Brian, I gotta be honest with you. Part of me does feel like all these old folks need to just die. And then all of this nonsense would die with it, because the nonsense is coming from the people older than we are.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Listen, we are running up on time here. Candice, you've got a great home project coming. That's it's homeostasis. Can you quickly talk about that? And then Tami, you can talk about some things that you're doing. We got about 60 seconds to close.
Okay, I'll go really quickly. So if you go to my link, bit.ly/it's homeostasis, you can submit for my compilation book that I'm working on right now. And it's about BIPOC plus women and their homeless stories, or their home stories, I should say, whether traumatic or dynamic or happy, sad, low vibrational, high vibrational. Just go submit your story. If you know a BIPOC plus woman who's had a great housing story or a not so great housing story, and you have one to write, check out that link and it'll give you all the information. Any proceeds go to creating housing stability for women of color, A plus youth organizations support that. Yeah.
Tami, real quick, got about 5 seconds.
All right.
Listen to my podcast on Monday. It's all
there you go. I love it. Listen, everybody, thanks for watching. We got to go. We'll see you next time on This Morning with Soulivity.
Bye, y'all.
This work is subject to copyright owned by Affinity Global LLC. Any reproduction or republication of all or part of this is expressly prohibited unless Affinity Global LLC has explicitly granted its prior written consent. All other rights reserved.